Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today you're going over part 5 of the story, which is titled, Nurse Wife Thought Open Marriage Would Give Her the Perfect Life, Instead it Brought on a Nightmare. And guys, I'm not going to do a whole recap, you all know what happened, but where we left off, the guy was reading through the iPad that his wife and her friend were conspiring to screw up and cheat the DNA test and all that, and obviously to make it out like this dude's the father, even though very likely he's not. And so we're going to continue on to see how this thing plays out, how he handles things and all that. Definitely entertaining. So the story continues, saying, a few days after the college guy earned his $50, Janet got up before I went to work and announced, I'm seeing a doctor today about my smell. It's probably something that can easily be fixed. You won't be able to keep saying that you don't love me because of my smell. Lady, it's a lot more than your smell. I told her I don't love you because of who you are, but good luck with your smell. I hope the doctor solves the problem. I'm tired of having to open the windows to air the place out every time I get home from work. He's so mean. I toyed with the idea of going to the doctor with her. I'd love to see the doctor's face when Janet tells him she needs to get rid of her stink. But all the details will be in the text that night with Ellen. Guaranteed. They were. Janet told Ellen the doctor was no help at all. He suggested that Janet take more time washing her nether parts, feet, and armpits. Wash her clothes after each wearing. Buy some feminine hygiene products. It's a hygiene problem, not a medical one. Janet told Ellen that the doctor could barely keep a straight face during the appointment. Janet told the idiot that she's already taking 30-minute showers, washing 3 times, and has tried every hygiene product on the market. There must be something wrong with her. The doctor told her to scrub harder. Janet doesn't know what to do, and Ellen texted, if random guys think you stink, maybe you should scrub harder. That's funny, man. So I started watching Janet's emails for the test results. She received the email Friday afternoon. It confirmed that the person who provided the DNA sample is the father of Janet's baby. The report has my name on it, but the Sid is the baby daddy. Well, we all figured that, dude. After worrying about this for days, I was so relieved I thought about spending another week with the escort to celebrate. But I had things to do, and I'd be completely broke after another week with her. Remember the previous story? After he found out what was going on, he decided to splurge at a resort somewhere, and he brought some escort with him to take his mind off his wife and his situation. I'm sure you spent a bundle, dude. I called my attorney and told her the good news. I explained that Ellen had collected the samples from Sid and Janet, put my name on Sid's, and sent off to the lab. This is all detailed in Janet's text, and I have screenshots of everything. Did Janet tell me that the test proves I'm the father? No. She's holding on to that bit of information in case I ask for a paternity test. Julie and I then got down to business. First thing was to set up a meeting with Janet, Julie, and me ASAP. I called Janet and told her that she and I needed to talk to my attorney. What about? I told her we need to talk about the baby. If Janet wants to know my plans regarding her and the baby, she should come to the meeting. Feel free, of course, to bring her own attorney, and Janet asked what my plans about our baby are. I told her she needed to meet with me and my attorney to find out. She reluctantly asked when and where. I refused to talk to Janet about the baby or the meeting all weekend. Janet, Julie, and I met up the following Monday afternoon. Oh my God. I can only imagine being the fly on the wall during that meeting. Julie started the meeting by telling Janet she needs to take a paternity test. Announcing she's pregnant right after being served with divorce papers is very suspicious. Janet said she's always been faithful to me, and there's no doubt the baby is mine. And she's just saying that with a smile on her face. Janet looked at me in the eye and asserted that I know she's never cheated on me. She was afraid that I'd accuse her of infidelity to get out of supporting our child, so she's had a paternity test done already. Oh, how nice of you. Meanwhile, she's committed fraud. With a smug smile on her face, she looked at me and said, there's no doubt you're the father of our baby, Richard. Your DNA proves it. She pulled out her phone, opened the lab report, and showed Julie. Julie looked at the report and asked Janet to email it to her, which Janet did. Then Julie asked if Janet is asserting that this DNA test proves I'm the father. Absolutely, she said. Did Janet get my consent to obtain and test my DNA? That's what I've been thinking the whole time, even though I didn't say it. Janet flushed a little, and she said she didn't want me to know about the test. It was just in case I started to claim the baby wasn't mine. She took some hair from my hairbrush. What's the big deal, she said. Julie said it's a crime in the state to analyze someone's DNA without that person's knowledge or consent. And it's also a crime to also do what she and Ellen were cooking up. And this guy has all the evidence. They are both criminal and civil penalties. Janet now just affirmed that the test she had done with my DNA. Julie looked at Janet sternly and told her that it's fraud to claim this test proves my paternity if somebody else's DNA was used. Uh-oh. Janet turned pale and looked back and forth between me and Julie. No one said anything for a while. Julie broke the silence by saying, I'm sure your test is fine, but we want to take another paternity test. This time you and Richard will go to the lab here in town, have them take samples in person, and sign consent forms. We'll compare those results with your test. Oh, not only is she pale, now she's sweating. And her smelly-ass feet are sweating too. Janet, panicky, replied, You can't make me take another paternity test. The one I did is valid and proves Richard is the father. I'm not taking any more tests, she said. Julie says she can get a court order and will. She'll also call a friend in the DA's office and let her know that Janet took my DNA and sent it to the lab without my consent. Uh-oh. Female lawyers playing hardball here. I think we should be having some waterworks about now. Julie already talked to an attorney in her office about pursuing the civil suit against Janet, but Julie is sure I wouldn't want to proceed with any of that if Janet agrees to take a second test under the conditions outlined. Right, Richard? And I nodded, yes. Janet said she has to think about it, maybe talk to an attorney. Julie said Janet has 72 hours to tell us if she'll take the test voluntarily before Julie begins legal action. Janet got up and stormed out without saying goodbye. 72 hours? I wouldn't give her 72 seconds. No, you're going to decide in 3 seconds. And if you don't do that, then we're going to proceed with the, 3, 2, yes, I'll do it. That's what you do. Julie smiled at me and said, Your wife is now officially between a rock and a hard place. Since we know the DNA is Sid's and Ellen took it without his consent, that case against them as Sid is to bring. But since Janet is claiming her test is authentic and proves you're the father, she's also committing fraud. Julie chuckled and said, Janet actually emailed me the proof of her fraud. I asked if any of this could land Janet and Ellen in jail. Julie answered that in general, there has to be harm done by someone by their actions. It's against the law to use someone's DNA without their consent, but if there is no injury to Sid, the DA's office probably won't take it up. Sid hasn't been affected by their taking his DNA. He doesn't even know they took it. Does it harm Sid to not tell him he's going to be a father? Sure, but he'll probably never know. Paternity fraud is rampant in the U.S., and there's no law, and no law makes it illegal for women to lie about paternity. But it's another thing to produce a fraudulent paternity test to get favorable divorce. Well, make sure your name is not on the birth certificate. You damn fucking better. So Julie continued, It's probably not enough that Janet emailed Julie the test and affirmed it's my DNA. So far, no real harm done. Maybe the DA's office would take action, but probably not. If Janet waves around the test, telling everyone it proves I'm the father, or she submits the fraudulent test to a judge, the DA will have to take action. Well, of course. Spreading around this misinformation. Ruining this guy's name, his reputation, all this stuff. She's committing fraud. I remind Julie that I don't want to let on that I know about Janet's cheating. She'll know I know if we expose her test in court. Julie said it won't get that far. The threat of criminal action will force Janet to make some very difficult decisions. Julie and I left it at that. I know that Janet will never take a second paternity test. Her texts with Ellen that night should prove entertaining. Oh, I can only imagine the text exchange between these two assholes. Their texts were entertaining and nonstop the whole time Janet and Ellen were at work. 8 hours of constant texting. Did any of these assholes work? I guess emergency patients and those who need lab work that night were out of luck. They texted about 3 main topics: the meeting with the lawyer and what to do now, news about Ellen's husband, and juicy gossip about pediatric nurse at the hospital. So he goes through this whole thing, guys, of the text exchange about all the shit they're babbling about. And while it's definitely interesting and can give more information in the story, I have skipped over that just to stick to the main shit here, which I know you'll appreciate. He goes on after the whole text exchange, which he read, but I'm not reading here. He says, most of the text between Janet and Ellen after we met with my attorney concerned what to do about the demand that she and I take a legal paternity test. These texts go on for hours, so I'll just tell you what the two geniuses finally concluded. They eventually realize that Janet has three options. First option, if she takes a second paternity test, Richard, me, will find out that he is not the father. He'll know that she's been unfaithful, there'll be no child support, and Janet will never see Richard again. Also, she and Ellen can be held responsible for providing a fraudulent paternity test. Second option, if she refuses to take the second test, Richard can go after her for taking a sample of his DNA without his consent. If he gets his own test and compares the DNA from the two tests, he'll know Janet and Ellen didn't use his DNA in their test. He'll know that Janet was unfaithful. Plus, Janet and Ellen could face fraud charges. Aha! If either of these first two scenarios, in either of these first two scenarios, Richard will be out in Janet's life forever. She'll be stuck raising Sid's kid and maybe have to face criminal charges. You know, while I feel bad, dude, for you and everything that happened to you, I still feel bad for this kid. Let's not forget this kid who's being brought into this world. It's Sid's baby and the spawn of fucking Janet. But it's not the kid's fault. But it's going to be a mess for this kid's life. But it's not your problem. If either of these first two scenarios, Richard will be out of Janet's life forever, she'll be stuck raising Sid's kid, and maybe have to face criminal charges. The third option is to end the pregnancy. A second paternity test then becomes irrelevant. But if she's no longer having what Richard thinks is his baby, he'll divorce her and she'll never see him again. Janet and Ellen decide that Janet should make one last pitch to get Richard to stay in the marriage. Oh, for God's sakes. Laying on the waterworks, laying on the bed, and laying on the all chains, laying on I'll wash my feet 19 times a day and soak it in vinegar, or whatever. I can only imagine what she's going to say here. Janet should ask again what she did to make him want to divorce her. Ellen said this: I don't love you. Stuff is hard to fight against. Janet needs Richard to tell her something that she did to upset him. Then she can explain it, convince him she's sorry and she won't do it again, and promise to do whatever he wants to fix it. They talked about how to get Richard to point to something she did instead of letting him go on this vague, don't love you crap. Well, you see again, guys, I tell you, how indifference is amazing, the power of indifference. And by him just saying, instead of confronting her about her cheating and just saying, I'm divorcing you because I just don't love you anymore. Oh, yeah, your feet fucking stink or whatever. Makes him crazy. What'd I do? These texts were on Monday night after the meeting with Julie. On Tuesday morning, Janet was up before I went to work. She wanted to talk. No, asshole, we're not going to talk. Let me enjoy my omelet in peace. In our discussion, I followed another suggestion from a subscriber. Here goes. Janet asked me when exactly I realized I didn't love her. She must have done something. What was it? I pretended to think about her question for a while, taking it seriously. Key word, he said he pretended to do this. I told her I guess I realized I didn't love her when she told me about Ellen's open marriage. Janet had asked me if I wanted to see other women. And I continued, I thought about it while you were babbling on, and I realized I really don't want to see another woman. I realized I don't love you and never have. You're not someone who could ever make me happy. Telling me about Ellen's open marriage just woke me up. In other words, that she doesn't love him because, guess what? No woman that loves their guy would want to have an open marriage. Since I would never be in an open marriage and don't want to be in any kind of marriage with you, we are divorcing. Janet started crying and said, all I wanted to do was tell you about our friend's bizarre marriage. I wasn't proposing an open marriage. Bullshit. And she says, I can't bear the idea of you being with someone else. I told you that. I can't stand that you're seeing that woman whose panties I found. Remember, he was with the hooker for a week and then he took her panties and made sure that his wife Janet saw that. All that drama. I forgot about that part. She said, it's crushing me. I don't want anyone else and can't imagine being with anybody else. Man, her nose is probably like 3 feet long with like branches and a bird's nest in there like Pinocchio at this point. I don't want anyone else and can't imagine being with anybody else, she said. I love you. I didn't think you really wanted to see other women. We were just talking, she said. I'm sorry I even brought it up. Can't you just forget about this? She was really crying now. I'm surprised you understood what the hell she was saying. She's probably going full Tuscan Raider. I answered, it's not about the conversation, although I thought at the time what kind of skanky wife encouraged her husband to see other women and what your motives really were. But then I thought, who cares? I just remember thinking that this was another idiotic conversation I have to endure with you. And that marriage to you means a lifetime of listening to more annoying, stupid blather. Well, you got that right. And any guys married right now that's listening to this has been married for a long time and is staying in it for reasons not because he loves his wife. Yeah, does this stupid shit ever stop? No, it only gets worse. You all know who you are. You know what I'm talking about here. You bet I want to see other women. But you asked when I realized I didn't want you anymore. That was when. I figured that at the time, why stop there? So I continued. And this is the guy saying his conversation with his wife. Ellen seems like an interesting person. I'd like to meet her. If I stop by the hospital one night, will you introduce me to her? Janet suddenly stopped crying. Just turned it off. She was furious and said, "Why do you want to meet Ellen? She cheats on her husband every chance she gets. Why would you be interested in meeting someone like that? You and I agree that good relationships, good marriages are based on trust, loyalty, and love. I love you. I've never cheated on you." Oh my God. You don't need to meet Ellen. We need to stay together for the sake of the baby. Of our baby. Our baby. Just tell me what you want me to do to fix our marriage. And I replied, I'd like to meet Ellen. Maybe I'll stop at the hospital some night and ask her in the ER. Hopefully Ellen isn't as boring and it sounds like she's very experienced in bed. Does Ellen have a cute ass? I'm tired of being with someone who's boring and predictable both in and out of the bedroom, whose butt isn't as big as Rhode Island. Well, I lived in Rhode Island for 4 years, and that's a big ass. Janet was first taken aback by my remark about her butt, but then incest. She told me I'm a real bastard and hope Ellen gives me a disease. Let's all take a moment to pause. Maybe you sip your beer, scarf down some popcorn, and appreciate, for those of you who have none of this bullshit in your life, how good your life is. Anyway, another slammed door, and she went to the bedroom. Oh, we have to have a slam door session with her. I don't know how, things aren't breaking at this point. You need to take that door off the fucking hinge, man. For the record, Janet has a beautiful ass, and it's something she's always been proud of. Not anymore. Janet texted Ellen at work that night, and she has to do something about her huge, disgusting ass. What a narcissist. Ellen said that Sid seems to like it, and Janet replied, Sid would stick his thing in anything with any hole. That's all we are to him, to any of these pussy hounds, a collection of holes. I'm such a fool, she said. How could I have done that to Richard? He's right about me as usual. I'm too stupid to be allowed to walk around without supervision. Ellen responded by texting that Janet will never say no to these guys. She craves the attention and excitement too much. Janet texted back a devil emoji with a sad face. It says, just to be clear, this is again the dude telling the story, I have zero intention of ever meeting Ellen, and the only thing I'd ever touch her is with a cattle prod. Saying she hopes Ellen gives me a disease reminds me I have no STIs. Well, thank God for that. So that night I got home and from work and opened Janet's iPad to see if Janet was texting. She was. Janet was blaming Ellen for the breakup of her marriage. Of course, blame it on the coworker. Meanwhile, Janet has been cheating on you all along. What's the joke about the gals in accountability? Jack Nicholson had it dead on. That was a movie. As good as it gets. I think it was that Jack Nicholson made that famous line. If Ellen hadn't convinced Janet to talk to Richard about Ellen's screwing up marriage, Janet and Richard would still be together. Ellen asked how Janet could fuck up telling Richard about open marriages. She was supposed to convince Richard, the dude telling the story, that she didn't want an open marriage, but that Richard did. Why did Richard come away thinking that she wanted to sleep with other men? Is Janet an idiot? Janet said that she followed their plan exactly. Their talk convinced him that he did want to see other women, and his marriage to Janet is keeping him from doing that. Ellen said when Richard finds that getting dates isn't as easy, he'll be back in Janet's loving arms. Janet then replied in all caps, he's already seeing another woman. I found her underwear in the laundry. No response from Ellen. Janet didn't mention to Ellen that I wanted to meet her. I guess Janet didn't want to give Ellen any ideas. This Ellen chick absolutely would be hooking up with you. Guaranteed. Janet then decided not to keep the baby. Her father took her to the clinic the Friday after Thanksgiving. She texted Ellen in advance about her decision. She didn't think she was capable of raising a kid on her own. I wouldn't be there when I found out that that's not my baby. She wouldn't be a good mother and sure and she was sure Sid wouldn't take any responsibility. Even if he did, who'd want to raise a kid with Sid? Yeah, but she had no problem doing all sorts of things we know from the first couple videos with Sid, huh? And also, what was her dad took her there? What was her dad thinking about her, right? Also, she figured it was either that or face civil or criminal charges. Janet texted Ellen that she's going to sign the divorce agreement as is. Oh, how interesting. That will make all the legal stuff go away, and Richard will never find out that he's not the father. She doesn't have any choice. Ellen wholeheartedly approved Janet's decision about the baby and divorce. Of course, Ellen wholeheartedly approved that. Probably concerned about her own liability regarding the fraudulent DNA test. But Ellen asked why Janet thought she wouldn't be a good mother. Get the fuck out of here. Janet had always wanted to be a mother. That and not wanting to work anymore. That's why she stopped taking the pill. Richard finds fault with everything about Janet, but he's not giving himself excuses, so he doesn't feel guilty about divorcing her. Or he's angry at Janet for the same reasons he won't talk about. Janet replied that's not true. Richard isn't angry at her. He's not taking revenge. There's no one thing she's done that Richard is upset about. Richard has just seen through her. He knows Janet better than anybody else and sees what a selfish, stupid, awful person she is. He already thinks Janet is loathsome, and he doesn't even know about Sid and the others. Again, this is their text exchange. This dumb broad really thinks that the husband here, you, don't know what's going on? Again, back to the text exchange. Janet said that she always believed Richard loved her so much that he would forgive anything she did. Well, she's wrong about that. It turns out he doesn't care about her at all. Janet continued that sometimes she thinks she smells because she's so rotten inside, and Richard can smell her rot. Well, there you go. Richard isn't divorcing her for something she's done. He's divorcing her because he doesn't want to be married to someone like her. So Janet concluded by the text that she wouldn't want to be married to someone like her either. Janet stayed at her parents' house throughout Thanksgiving weekend, and I didn't see her until I got back from cycling Sunday afternoon. When I got home, her father's truck was parked outside my apartment packed with Janet's junk. Oh, joy, you get to see your father-in-law, who I guarantee has no idea what's going on, and you're the mean bastard that's hurting his little girl. I walked in as Janet and her father were collecting the last of her stuff. I nodded at her father, but he ignored me. And Janet asked if we could talk. Sure. She said, you don't love me and don't want me in your life. You don't think I can change and be the person you want as a wife. I believe I can change and am willing to do anything to become the woman you love. But you don't want me in your life, or a wife, or the mother of your child. So I took care of the baby. Oh, she's now blaming this guy for doing what she did. You are no longer going to be a father. I thought that having a child we made together we would love and raise would keep us together. You've made your decision clear. Again, making this guy out to be the bad guy. Never ceases to amaze me when this situation occurs. She also says, losing your love and seeing your indifference to me is the toughest thing I ever had to endure. Indifference, guys. But I can't make you love me and stay with me. I left the signed divorce papers on the kitchen counter. I won't contest the divorce. My main goal now is to work on myself. I want to become a better person that you can be proud of. Good luck with that, honey. She stopped, a smile on her face, and waited for me to offer encouragement or best wishes. But telling me that she and I made a good child together was too much. Instead of responding to her, I got up, turned on the ceiling fan, and opened all the windows. It was about 40 degrees out, and Janet's father looked at me like I was crazy. I explained that it really stinks in here. Janet burst out in tears and ran out of the apartment. I yelled at her not to forget to leave the apartment key, but I watched as she got in her father's truck and sat there, head in hands, bawling. What an asshole. Now, what do you guys think is happening next? She's out in the dad's truck crying her eyes out, and now our guy here is with her dad. Watch how this situation goes down. Her father stared at me with pure hatred and said, "My daughter is a wonderful girl and has been a good and faithful wife." Really, Dad? You'll never know a better person or find a better wife. You two and your child could have made a wonderful family, but you threw that away. I think it's time to show Dad some of those pictures from the first couple videos to show him his little girl is exactly an angel. You say you don't love her and want a divorce. Fine. It's one thing to want a divorce, but to do this shit to her, break her down, tell her she smells, constantly belittle her is really monstrous. You've wrecked her, he said. She's changed from the confident, happy, wonderful young woman he raised to someone who's depressed, insecure, and thinks she's a horrible person. That's all because of you. Oh my God. He says, but I'm going to stop doing that voice. But Janet keeps defending you. She thinks you're right about her. I don't understand why Janet believes you're crap. Is there something she hasn't told me, something I'm missing here? I didn't say anything, but he continued. Her mother and I have convinced her to start therapy, but you need it as much as she does. You're a real a-hole. With that, he picked up her remaining stuff and left. I was going to ask him to get the apartment key, but I thought better of it. I closed the windows after they drove off, then I ordered a bed to replace the one that Janet and Sid soiled. I think you need to send him all the information about what Janet was doing, because now you're divorcing. She's done. Or at least get the timing right and everything, and then provide Daddy-O here with all the pictures, all the evidence, so that way you can show him. Because obviously she didn't tell him the real reason. What to do about Ellen and Sid? Ellen's husband is punishing Ellen way more than I thought I ever could do. Her life will continue to go downhill. Well, good. Ellen's a piece of garbage. Her nice house and car will be taken from her, and she'll get nothing in her divorce. Well, wasn't Ellen thinking she was going to make out like a bandit in the divorce? I bet her husband has more surprises for her. I thought about Sid, and I want to bring some difficulties into his life. After Janet's father tore into me about my treatment of Janet, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. If Janet's father believes that Janet is spiraling downward so much she needs therapy, the right thing would be to let him know just how much help she needs. The right thing is letting him know what Janet hasn't told him. Let him know about Sid. He should realize that the new poor self-image Janet has now is more genuine than the view her father has of his princess. I decided my early Christmas present to her father would be some happy photos of Janet playing with Sid. Ha ha ha. There you go. I'll include the pictures of Janet as the Joker, but maybe some shots of them in my bedroom. Sid's face isn't shown, but it's clear that the guy plying Janet is not me. I'll include pictures of Sid carrying Janet butt naked over his shoulder around the lab reception area. Maybe a couple of the pictures that made me throw up. I wonder how strong her father's stomach is. Hey, he didn't even want to hear your side of the story, and was attacking you. So yeah, he needs to know what the extent of his daughter's issues are. For her, of course. But I don't want them to know that the pictures came from me, that I know about her cheating. I don't want Janet to ever doubt that I divorced her because she's simply a terrible person. I don't want her to tell herself that this was just my revenge for infidelity. After all, right, you want to keep her thinking that you just divorced her to divorce her. That shatters her ego more. And the bitch smells. I don't want her to think that I could get over her mistake and just move on with her life. I don't want her to move on. I want her to remain broken and frozen in place. Damn, dude. So I have to get the pictures to her father, them knowing they're from me. Dude, he's going to figure they're out there from you. I decided that Sid should send the pictures to her father. Sid had threatened to send the pictures to her parents after Janet broke it off with them. Yeah, Sid could send them, but still he's going to figure out somehow it came from you. How to have these pictures come from Sid? My guess is that he hasn't shared the pictures yet. He's not going to. I figure I'll create a fake email account using a variation of Sid's name and send the pictures from that account. Not very hard to do. It would take some research online and maybe cost a few bucks, but it would not have to been hard for Sid to find her father's email address. That'll be worth the money, like the $50 you spent on that college kid to come to the hospital and say that your wife stinks. I'll wait for a few weeks to put some time between Janet and leave my apartment and her father getting Sid's email. Sid will deny the email came from him, but the pictures will be so devastating to Janet and her daddy that they really won't care where they came from. And who else but Sid could have sent the pictures? Yeah, well, Janet will just say, they were photoshopped, or some AI program did them. That's not me. That's the girl down the street. That's Jessica down the street. Ellen repeatedly assured Janet that I would have confronted Janet if I found out about her infidelity. I never did confront her, so the pictures, proof of her cheating, could not be for me. After Janet signed the divorce agreement, we filed it with the court the Monday after Thanksgiving. Whoa. It's waiting for the judge's signature. We should be divorced in a month or less. Okay, I don't know where you live, and maybe I'm a little unfamiliar with things, but this seems awfully fast, but great. I'm positive that after my divorce is final, Sid will feel so guilty about being the horrible employee that he is that he'll also confess his and Janet's inappropriate behavior by sending a similar email to the hospital's HR department. Yes, after the divorce is done, get these fuckers fired. Amen. And get Ellen out too. Well, bro, that's quite a story. And I'm sure there's going to be more coming down the road. And if there's something worth telling, definitely send it my way. I'm sure the guys here that have an interest in this story want to hear more. So there you go, guys. A very different take, like I said, about handling the situation. Most guys will confront the wives about all their spicy activities, but this guy took a different path, and that probably was very hard. Just making her insecure. I'm leaving you because I'm leaving. I'm not in love with you. And you stink. And other things he said. And how this whole thing's unraveling, and his indifference and her not knowing is driving her nuts, you know? And now finally wrapping it up with, after the divorce is done, everything's settled, then the pictures, the proof, all that. So anyway, bro, good update here. I'm sorry going through this bullshit, but, well, a lot of this goes around. But anyhow, guys, there you go. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let us think about this. Be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.